The last echo of music had died hours ago, but the ballroom still felt alive, almost watching me. Chandeliers flickered like nervous eyes, and every abandoned champagne glass seemed to whisper the same question I'd been avoiding all night. I stood there alone, holding that damned Manila envelope, the one my boy pressed into my hands with a smile too polished to be real. His signature sat bold on the last page. Mine waited below it, an empty line that felt more like a cliff's edge, and even now I can still hear him. "Sign it, Dad, or you'll destroy my future." The funny thing is, he said it like toast, like nothing was breaking, like he hadn't just carved a line straight through the middle of my life. I stepped out of that suffocating room, into air sharp enough to make a man feel his age. Martha's ring, her wedding ring, slipped on my pinky as I rubbed my thumb across the envelope. A beer stain smeared across the corner, or maybe it was sweat, or maybe it was something darker. Hard to tell when your hands won't stop shaking. The night smelled like roses dying on cold stems. Fitting, I suppose. See, a father prepares himself for many things, for scraped knees, for heartbreaks, for the weight of being the man your child thinks you are. But nothing prepares you for the day your son looks you in the eye and says your name, your whole life, is something he needs to escape. I leaned against my truck, letting the cold metal steady me. It hit me then, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, surgical one. This wasn't about a house. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about a name. It was about distance. The kind a father can't cross. The kind that opens slowly, year by year, until you look up and realize the boy who used to sit beside you on the garage floor now stands across a ballroom asking you to sign yourself out of his future. The envelope crinkled under my grip. I could have signed right then. I almost did. God knows I almost did. But something in me, something small but stubborn, whispered no. Not yet. Not tonight. Not like this. The wind lifted a loose ribbon from the wedding arch behind me. It fluttered, desperate and weightless, before falling at my feet. I picked it up. Funny how the smallest thing can feel like a sign. As I climbed into the driver's seat, the dashboard lights flickered on, casting a pale glow across the envelope in my lap. My name stared back at me from the signature line, waiting, patient, almost hopeful. But my hands, my heart, my instincts, they weren't. And deep in that quiet moment, in a truck older than my son's marriage, a thought settled into me like a stone dropped in deep water. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. Something that would test the kind of man I believed I was, and the kind of man my son had already decided I wasn't. Because what happened at that wedding wasn't the real break, no. The real break came after, when the truth finally caught up to both of us. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that knows your secrets. The kind that presses against your chest and waits, patient and heavy. I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me, watching the streetlight outside flicker through the blinds. Every time that light flicked off, I could see Connor's face again. Not the way he looked as a boy, wide-eyed, curious, always smudged with grease, but the way he looked tonight. Clean, sharp, like a man trying to carve himself out of stone so he'd never be mistaken for the son of a mechanic again. The envelope sat there like a living thing, breathing, waiting, judging. I pressed my thumb against the crease, felt the dried stain, felt the soft spot where the paper had thinned under the pressure of my grip. It was ridiculous how 1,000 moments between us could feel so far away, and this one sheet of paper could feel so close. That's when the ache started. Not in my chest, deeper, older, a place shaped by years I couldn't get back. I whispered into the dark, "Martha, I wish you were here for this." And for a moment, I swear I felt her hand on my shoulder. Warm, steady, reminding me that fathers aren't supposed to break, not even when their hearts are begging for permission to. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked like it was warning someone. Maybe me, maybe him, maybe both of us. I opened the envelope. Inside were neat stacks of papers, glossy, crisp, heavy with numbers that didn't make sense for a man my son claimed he'd become. A house with 3 fireplaces, marble floors, chandeliers that probably cost more than the tools I built my life with. He wanted that world, and he wanted me to buy him into it. But what shook me wasn't the price. It wasn't even the audacity. It was this thought, the one that hit me like a wrench dropped on concrete. My son had prepared everything except a place for me in his new life. Not a bedroom, not a photo, not even a corner of the mantle where Martha might have lived. Just a signature, just a debt, just a way for him to become someone without the burden of who raised him. I leaned back in the chair, the old wood crying out louder than I did. I wasn't angry at him. God, I wish I was. Anger would have been easier. What I felt was something worse, something quiet and sharp. Disappointment. The kind you don't shout, the kind you swallow. Because somewhere along the line, without me noticing, my boy had learned to measure worth in ways I never taught him. I folded the envelope shut, placed it gently on the table, and finally said the truth out loud. This isn't about a mortgage, this is about losing him. But fathers don't give up, not on their sons, not on their stories, not on the truth. And the truth was about to cost both of us far more than money. Morning came too fast. Sunlight seeped through the blinds like an unwelcome truth, stretching across the kitchen table until it touched the envelope. The one thing I wished the daylight wouldn't find. I'd barely moved, barely blinked. Just sat there listening to the quiet tick of the clock on the wall, the one Martha insisted we keep even after its chime broke. She said a home should always have something that keeps time, even if it's imperfect. Funny, I'd spent so many years following that clock. I didn't notice when Connor stopped following me. I ran my fingertips across the envelope once more. If you've ever held something you knew you weren't ready to open but couldn't stop touching, that's what it felt like. A bruise you keep pressing just to see how much pain you can take. At 8:15, my phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen, Connor. My breath caught. I didn't answer. I watched it ring until it died, the screen going dark like a door closing. Then 2 seconds later, another buzz, a message this time. Dad, let's talk. You didn't sign. We need to fix this before Monday. Fix this. That choice of words stung more than the demand. He still thought I was something that could be repaired with enough pressure, like a faulty alternator or a worn-out belt. Something he could tighten, replace, or discard depending on what his new life required. A knot formed in my throat. I didn't respond. I stood, stretched the stiffness from my back, and reached for my jacket. If my boy wanted to talk about fixing things, well, he could find me in the only place I knew how to fix anything, the garage. The building greeted me with that familiar scent, oil, old wood, dust warmed by morning sun, and a hint of coffee lingering from yesterday's pot. Most people would wrinkle their noses at it, but to me, it smelled like purpose, like 35 years of showing up. I flipped on the lights, each one flickering awake with a tired hum just like me. Then I saw it, the Civic, the old blue 1999 Honda we rebuilt together when he was 16. I kept it all these years, tuned it, polished it, kept it running like it still had somewhere to go. I walked toward it slowly, tracing my hand across the hood. I could almost hear the echoes of our laughter in this place, the grease fights, the arguments about socket sizes, Martha passing us sandwiches through the side door, smiling like her boys were building more than a car. Back then, Connor didn't care about marble floors or neighborhood gates. He cared about horsepower, the sound of a clean engine start, the pride of getting something right with his own hands. When did that boy disappear? The garage door rattled behind me. I turned. Ray Wilson stood there, old friend, older customer, the kind of man who'd tell you the truth even if it cracked something inside you. "Sam," he said, stepping in, "you look like hell." I tried to smile. "Long night." He studied me for a moment the way a man studies a crack in a foundation, wondering when it'll give way. "Got your son's wedding photos online," Ray said gently. He looked different. Everyone kept using that word like Connor was a suit he'd put on too tight. Ray stepped closer. "What happened?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened the envelope and handed him the top page. His eyebrows lifted, then lowered. Then he exhaled a slow, heavy sigh. "Sam, this isn't a favor he's asking, it's a noose." I swallowed hard. Ray continued, "Your boy's drowning in expectations and he's using your lungs to breathe." I leaned against the workbench, suddenly tired in a way sleep can't fix. "I can't lose him," I whispered. Ray put a warm hand on my shoulder. "You won't, but you might have to lose the version of him you're holding on to." The words landed like a wrench dropped on concrete. And that's when I realized something I hadn't let myself feel until that moment. Connor wasn't the only one changing. The ground beneath us was shifting, and the first crack had already formed. I stood there in the middle of the garage, Ray's words hanging in the air like dust in sunlight. Lose the version of him I'd been holding on to, God. That hurt more than anything Connor had said into that microphone. Because deep inside, I knew Ray wasn't wrong. My boy had grown into someone I didn't fully recognize, and I'd been clinging to memories like a man gripping the last scrap of a rope fraying in his hands. Ray lingered near the Civic, running a finger along the hood. "He used to love this car," he murmured. "Spent more weekends here than anywhere else." I nodded, though my throat felt too tight to speak. It wasn't the car I missed. It was the boy who stood beside me all those years, eager, curious, unashamed to call me Dad. The garage suddenly felt too big, too quiet, echoing with things I hadn't said and things I wished I could take back. I remembered Connor at 8 years old, standing on a milk crate to reach the engine bay, asking me how a spark plug worked. He used to think I knew everything. Somewhere along the way, that look in his eyes changed. Not because I did anything different, but because the world around him did. Ray sighed and tossed the envelope back onto the workbench. "Sam, you're a good man, but don't mistake that for weakness." He paused, resting both hands on his hips. "Your son doesn't understand yet what real strength looks like." His voice softened. "Make sure you do." He walked out, leaving the garage door rolling shut behind him, the sound slow and heavy, like a curtain closing after a tragedy no one bought tickets to see. I sat in my old swivel chair, the one Martha insisted we buy even though it squeaked with every turn, and stared at the paperwork again. My name in blank ink, his infirm pen strokes, two signatures that meant two very different futures. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Connor. "Dad, can you please just call me? This is time sensitive. Time sensitive." Like our relationship was a document that expired Monday at 9 a.m., I didn't call him back. Not out of anger, but because I didn't trust my voice not to crack the moment he said my name. Instead, I stood and walked out to the parking lot. The morning air tasted bitter, metallic, the kind of cold that gets into your bones whether you invite it or not. I unlocked my truck and sat inside for a long moment, both hands on the steering wheel. I wasn't driving anywhere in particular. Sometimes a man just needs motion to think. Roads slid beneath my tires as my mind churned through memories, old and new. I kept seeing Connor standing at that microphone, smiling like he'd just performed a magic trick, telling a room of strangers that the name I carried, the one Martha carried, was something he had to rise above. Then asking me for nearly $1 million to help him climb. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling the crack in the leather where my thumb always rested. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to turn the truck around, go straight to Cleveland, and wrap my boy in a hug until all this resentment melted out of him. But love isn't supposed to suffocate, and pride isn't supposed to blind. I parked outside the one place I always ended up when the world felt too heavy, the edge of Maple Street, where the old maple tree still stood in front of the house Martha and I bought when we were young enough to think we had all the time in the world. Its branches reached toward the sky like it was asking God the same question I was. Where did we go wrong? I sat there beneath that tree for what felt like an hour, listening to leaves whisper in the breeze like Martha's voice at the edge of my memory. And for the first time since the wedding, I felt something shift inside me. A small truth, sharp, unavoidable. My son wasn't trying to ruin me. He was trying to build a life he thought he needed. He just didn't realize he was cutting me out of the foundation. But a father, a real father, doesn't get replaced. Not by money, not by status, not by a different last name. I exhaled, long and slow, and leaned my head back against the seat. Because the next step, the one I knew I had to take, was going to change everything for both of us. And God help us, it was going to hurt. Because the truth wasn't waiting in the wedding. The real truth was waiting in the numbers Connor hoped I'd never look at. I drove back to the garage with a feeling in my gut I hadn't felt since Martha's diagnosis. That slow, rising certainty that something terrible was hiding just beneath the surface. And I'd been too afraid to lift the veil. When I walked inside, the garage felt different. Not empty, not cold, just honest. Like it had always been. Like it didn't care about chandeliers or marble floors or country clubs. It only cared about what things really were, broken or not, fixable or not. The envelope waited where I left it, sitting on the workbench like a challenge. I opened it again, looked deeper this time, looked past the gloss, past the polished handwriting, past the confidence of a young man who thought the world bent itself to ambition. And that's when I found it. Numbers that didn't make sense. Expenses he never told me about. Credit lines he wasn't supposed to have. A car payment twice the mortgage I used to pay on our first home. Interest rates meant for people who spend first and think later. I felt my heart doing that old stutter again, the one Martha always told me to get checked out. But she wasn't here to say it, and I didn't need a doctor to tell me what was happening. My boy wasn't building a future. He was drowning in one. And instead of learning to swim, he'd tied the weight of it to my ankle and thrown me the rope. I sank into my chair, elbows on my knees, hands shaking over the papers. I whispered into the empty bay, "Connor, what have you done?" The garage swallowed the words whole. I reached for my reading glasses, the ones Martha used to tease me about when I'd pretend I didn't need them. The lenses caught the overhead lights as I began examining everything line by line, every payment, every signature, every debt. By the time I reached the last page, my stomach had turned to stone. Connor hadn't been denied the loan because the house was expensive. He'd been denied because he was already drowning in debt he'd never told me about. He didn't need a cosigner. He needed a financial lifeline. He needed saving, and he thought I was the only one left who'd do it. The realization shook through me like a cold shock. He wasn't embarrassed by my name. He was terrified of becoming the kind of man who needed help, and he was using shame as a shield. I closed the folder slowly, carefully, as if the truth inside it might explode if I moved too quickly. Then came the sound that cut through everything. The sound I'd been waiting for, dreading, anticipating. The buzz of my phone. This time I answered, "Dad." His voice was tight, strained. Not angry, not yet, but brittle, as if one wrong word would shatter it. I didn't speak. I let the silence work. "Dad, we need to talk about the house." Another pause. Longer this time. Waited. "I know you're upset, but this is important. Sophia's family, I cut in gently, quietly. Connor, stop. The silence on his end froze the air between us. I spoke slowly, each word heavy with the truth I discovered. Before I talk about the house, I need you to be honest with me. About what? He asked too fast. You know what? Another pause, this one full of something darker. Fear, maybe shame, denial. Dad, I don't know what you're implying. But he did. We both knew he did. I closed my eyes and whispered the line he wasn't ready for. Son, why didn't you tell me how much debt you're in? Silence. Long. Heavy, devastating. I heard the breath catch in his throat. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Everything he tried to hide had just risen to the surface. And the truth didn't break us. Not yet. But it cracked something wide open. Because the debt wasn't the real secret. The real secret was why he was so desperate to hide it. The silence on the phone stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. It wasn't anger pulsing through the line. It wasn't even disappointment. It was something far more painful. The sound of my son realizing the truth was finally out in the open, and there was nowhere left to hide. Dad, he finally whispered, barely breathing the word, how did you? I looked, I said. You handed me the papers. You asked me to sign. You wanted me to be part of it, so I became part of it. He exhaled sharply, like he'd been punched in the gut. You weren't supposed to go through all of it, he said. You weren't supposed to know. I finished. He went silent again. I stood in the garage doorway, staring out at the empty lot beyond, the morning sun bleeding into patches across the concrete. This place had always been a home for honesty, for fixing what was broken, for telling the truth even when it hurt. No fancy floors, no polished speeches, just grit, effort, integrity. Connor had grown up in this light, and now he was trying to outrun it. Son, I said quietly, why didn't you come to me before it got this bad? His voice trembled, not enough for most people to hear, but enough for a father to notice. Because I didn't want you to think I failed. My heart clenched. Failed. The boy who graduated college without a penny of debt. The boy who had every chance Martha and I never did. The boy who once believed he could fix anything if he held the right tools. Connor, I whispered, failing isn't needing help. Failing is letting pride drown you before you reach out. He didn't respond. I walked deeper into the garage, my hand tracing the old wooden workbench. I could feel Martha beside me, her voice soft and certain in the back of my mind. Don't raise a boy who fears failure more than dishonesty. Maybe that's exactly what had happened. Dad, Connor said suddenly, voice cracking, I just wanted to make you proud. I wanted to show you I could build something big, something better. Better than what? I asked. He hesitated. Better than this. There it was, the blade finally revealed, not sharp from malice, sharp from shame. I took a breath that felt heavier than the years I'd lived. Son, listen to me carefully, I said. This garage put food on your table, clothes on your back. It sent you to college. It paid for your mother's final months. It held this family together when grief threatened to tear us apart. My voice shook, just once. Enough. This is not something you rise above. Another pause. This is something you rise from. For a moment I thought I heard him cry, not a sob, not a wail, just the soft, broken sound a man makes when the truth finally finds him. But when he spoke again, his voice had changed. Hardened, bracing itself. Dad, we need that house. If I don't get it, Sophia's family will think I can't provide. They already think I'm beneath them. There it was, the real enemy, not the debt, not the house, not even the name, fear. Fear of not fitting into a world that would never stretch enough to welcome him anyway. Son, I said, if a family can't respect where you come from, they won't respect where you're going. He didn't want to hear that. He never had. Dad, he snapped, I'm going to be something bigger than all this. I just need your help to get there. All this. The garage. The life Martha and I built from dust and hope. the legacy he was trying so hard to shake off. "Connor," I whispered, "I'm trying to help you, but not this way." He inhaled sharply, a sound full of resentment, fear, and a young man's desperate wish to outrun his own reflection. Then he said it. "Dad, if you don't sign this, everything falls apart." I closed my eyes. "No," I said. "If I do sign it, that's when it falls apart." He hung up on me. The line went dead. And for the first time since he was a child, my son ran from me not with his feet, but with his pride. The silence that followed was colder than the winter air, but beneath it, I felt something shifting, something dangerous, something inevitable, because debts can be paid, houses can be bought, names can change. But the truth was coming for all of us, and the truth wasn't the money. It was the reason he needed it and what he was willing to sacrifice to get it. I stood there in the quiet garage long after Connor's voice vanished from the phone, letting the silence settle around me like dust. There's a strange kind of pain that comes when your child hangs up on you. It isn't loud. It isn't violent. It's soft, like a door being closed gently, but firmly enough to tell you not to follow. I slid the phone into my pocket and stared at the Civic, our project, our bridge, our history, feeling that ache crawl its way up my ribs. I'd given that boy every part of myself, every hour, every dollar I didn't have, every lesson I learned the hard way so he wouldn't have to, and suddenly I realized he didn't want the lessons. He only wanted the shortcuts. The garage felt too tight, too full of memories pressing in on me. I stepped outside, breathing in the cold air until my lungs burned. Across the lot, the sun was barely climbing over the roof of the gas station next door, throwing long shadows across the cracked asphalt. That's when I saw her, Sophia. She walked toward me with purposeful steps, heels clicking like a metronome of disapproval. Tall, polished, wrapped in a coat that probably cost more than my truck. She didn't smile. She didn't greet me. She looked at me the way someone looks at a stain they're debating whether to scrub or ignore. "Samuel," she said. No Mr. Miller, no warmth. Just my name, flat, practiced, coated with something I recognized too well, judgment. "What brings you here?" I asked, voice calm, though everything inside me braced tight. She didn't answer right away. She looked around the lot, the peeling paint, the stacks of old tires, the rusted sign that flickered whenever the wind picked up. "This is where Connor grew up?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Yes," I said. She nodded slowly like she was studying a crime scene. "I see." Two words that told me everything. She stepped closer. "Connor's very stressed about the house situation. He told me you're hesitating." Hesitating. Funny word. Like I was deciding whether to pick a paint color, not whether to put my retirement, my home, my future on the line. "Sophia," I said evenly, "your house is nearly $1 million. "It's not my house," she corrected sharply. "It's ours, and Connor deserves it." Deserves. People throw that word around like it's confetti. Deserve, earn, want. They start sounding the same when pride gets loud enough. She folded her arms. "We need this cosign, and Connor told me you have the ability to help." "Ability," I repeated, the word sour on my tongue. "Maybe, but that doesn't mean I should." She exhaled through her nose, tiny, controlled, irritated. "Look, Connor is trying to be successful, to give us a life that matches our goals. Our goals. Not one mention of him. Not one mention of me. Not one mention of love." And maybe she didn't mean it that way, but the truth slips out in the little words. I studied her face, searching for anything, concern, fear, affection, but all I found was expectation. The kind that isn't requested but required. "When you love someone," she said finally, "you help them achieve their future." I felt that. Not the meaning, the emptiness behind it. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "If I don't sign, what happens?" Her eyes flashed, a flicker of frustration, then panic, then calculation. Connor will lose the house, she said, and he'll be humiliated in front of my family. He feels you're putting him in an impossible position. Humiliated in front of her family. I realized then who Connor was really trying to impress. Not me, not himself, not even Sophia. It was the people behind her, the ones who never approved of him, the ones who measured worth like weight on a scale, the ones who made my son believe the name Miller wasn't enough. Sophia stepped closer, lowering her voice. Please, Samuel, if you love him, you'll sign. The way she said it, soft, persuasive, transactional, made something inside me twist. I didn't answer her. Not yet. Because that was the moment I saw through the polished smiles and expensive promises. Saw the pressure building behind my son's choices. Saw the truth behind the confession he made at that wedding microphone. He didn't hate his last name. He was ashamed he couldn't live up to their first impressions. And I was the easiest thing to blame for that. Sophia waited, expecting me to crumble. But all I felt was the ground shifting beneath us. Because if Sophia was the pressure, her parents were the storm behind it. And I was about to meet the ones who taught my son to be ashamed of where he came from. I didn't go looking for Sophia's parents. Life has a way of putting you exactly where you don't want to be, and sooner than you'd like. 2 days later, I found myself walking into that country club. The same one where the chandeliers shook, where Connor smiled a smile that wasn't real, where my name became a punchline in front of 200 strangers. I wasn't there for the scenery. Marble floors, gold-framed art, a lobby that smelled like expensive perfume, and the kind of money that never had to worry about overdraft fees. None of that mattered. I came because they'd asked to discuss the loan matter in person. Their tone in the email wasn't rude. It was worse, polite enough to sound like a favor they were granting me. I stepped through the wide double doors, and the receptionist waved me through with a look I'd seen before. The look people give a man wearing work boots in a place built for loafers. I found them seated on the outdoor terrace. Sophia's father in a pressed navy suit, her mother in a dress that shimmered like still water. They didn't stand when I walked up, didn't smile, just watched me approach like I was a maintenance worker who'd shown up uninvited. Mr. Miller, her father said, gesturing toward an empty chair. Thank you for joining us. I sat, slow, deliberate, not because I wanted to intimidate them, but because I refused to let them see me rush. Sophia's mother placed her teacup down with a soft clink. We wanted to speak with you about Connor's situation. As if my son were a misfiled document, her father sighed. We understand the stress he's under, and we've tried to guide him toward making responsible decisions. Responsible, I repeated, meeting his eyes. Is that what you call encouraging him to buy a house he can't afford? He blinked, offended not by the truth but by the tone I used to say it. We believe in setting standards, he said coolly. Our daughter deserves a certain quality of life. And my son deserves what? I asked. The silence they gave me was louder than words. My jaw tightened. I looked between them, two people so wrapped in their own comfort they couldn't see the damage they'd done to a young man desperate to keep up. Sophia's mother folded her hands. Connor is ambitious. That's one of the reasons Sophia chose him. But ambition requires support. Support, I echoed. And when his ambition outruns his paycheck, who do you expect to cover the distance? They didn't answer. They didn't need to. Her father leaned forward. Mr. Miller, let's be direct. If you co-sign the mortgage, Connor can buy the home. Sophia will feel secure. We will feel confident in his stability. Everyone wins. Everyone except the man who would spend the next 30 years paying for it. I shook my head slowly. You're not asking me to help him succeed. You're asking me to subsidize the version of him you want. Sophia's mother raised her chin. He wants it too. Yes, I said softly, because he thinks it'll make him enough for you. The The words landed like a crack of thunder, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Her father's expression hardened. Mr. Miller, Connor is becoming part of our family. That means aligning with our standards, our expectations. And where, I asked, do you think he learned to be ashamed of mine? He flinched, but only slightly. I leaned in just a little, voice calm but steady. You talk about standards like they're something you inherit, but real standards are built, earned, proven. You don't get them because you can afford a gate around your driveway. Sophia's mother exhaled sharply, as though I dirtied her table simply by speaking. We're not trying to offend you, she said. I nodded. But you are, and you don't even realize it. Another silence. This one colder than the tile under our feet. I stood to leave, placing both palms on the table, not forceful, just enough for them to feel the weight of my decision. I'm not signing the mortgage, I said. Not because I don't love my son, but because I do. Her father frowned. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm stopping one. I turned and walked away while their shock still hung in the air, every step heavier than the last. In that moment, I knew one thing with painful clarity. Connor wasn't going to take this well, and the storm behind him was already forming. As I stepped out of the club and into the fading daylight, my phone buzzed again. A message from him, 6 words. 6 words that hit harder than any argument. We need to talk, now, please. Because conversations like that don't end with understanding. They end with doors closing or breaking wide open. I sat in my truck for a long time before opening Connor's message. We need to talk, now, please. The please was what got me. That one word, soft, desperate, a crack in the armor he'd been wearing since the wedding. I exhaled slowly and typed back 2 words, I'm coming. The drive to his apartment felt shorter than usual, maybe because my mind was racing faster than the truck could carry me. Maybe because some part of me already knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a reckoning. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw him immediately. Connor was standing outside the building, pacing, rubbing the back of his neck the way he used to when he got nervous before a big test in school. He looked smaller than he had at the wedding, not physically, but in spirit, like something inside him had deflated. When he saw me, he stopped pacing. He swallowed hard. Dad, he said, and the word left his mouth like a confession. I approached slowly. What's going on, son? He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Sophia told me you met with her parents. I did, I said. He looked down at the ground. And you said no. I said I wasn't signing the mortgage, I corrected gently. He clenched his jaw. They think you're sabotaging us. I shook my head. I'm trying to save you. His laugh was sharp, frustrated, brittle. Save me. Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. I know what I'm doing. I stepped closer. Do you? He looked away again, too quickly, too defensively. That was when I knew he wasn't angry at me, not truly. He was angry at himself. Angry at the hole he dug. Angry that he couldn't fill it with charm or confidence or the illusion of success. I took out the envelope, still creased, still stained, and held it out between us. Connor, I saw everything. He didn't look at it. He didn't have to. He knew what everything meant. Dad, he whispered, his voice cracking around the edges, I didn't want you to see that. Why not? His eyes lifted slowly to meet mine, and for a moment I saw the kid he used to be. The one who looked to me for strength, for guidance, for reassurance that things would be okay. Then he said it, the truth he'd been hiding even from himself. Because I didn't want you to see how scared I am. The words nearly dropped me. He wiped at his face, embarrassed. Everything's moving so fast, Dad. Expectations, bills, Sophia's family, the job, the image I have to keep up, the life I'm supposed to build. And everyone thinks I'm ready except me. I took a breath, slow, steady, the kind a father takes before holding his son together. You should have told me, I said softly. He shook his head. I didn't want you to think I'm failing. I stepped closer and placed my hand on his shoulder. Son, everyone fails. Everyone stumbles. Everyone fears. That's part of living. But when you hide it, when you pretend you're someone you're not, that's when the fall gets dangerous. His voice broke. I don't want to be a disappointment. The word cut like a knife. You're not, I said firmly. You never were. Not once. He exhaled shakily, his shoulders dropping as if 30 pounds slid off him in that moment. We stood in silence until he finally asked the question he'd been avoiding. What do I do now? I looked him in the eye. You start by telling me the truth, all of it. He nodded slowly. Okay, but there's something I haven't told you yet. Something I should have said before the wedding, something important. A chill ran through me. The way his voice dipped. The way his eyes shifted. The heaviness behind that important. Connor, what is it? He swallowed hard. Dad, the house wasn't the only thing I needed your name for. The world around us stilled. Even the wind paused. My name, I repeated. He nodded. And when he finally spoke, the truth cracked open between us like a fault line. Dad, there's something else tied to your name. Something I didn't tell you because I was scared. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Connor, what did you use my name for? His answer didn't come right away. But when it did, everything changed. Because the house wasn't the debt that mattered. The real debt was the one he'd already put in my name. The sky felt heavier suddenly, like it understood what was coming before I did. Connor's eyes were fixed on the pavement, shoulders tight, chest barely rising. He looked like a man bracing for impact, and I didn't know yet whether the collision was going to break him or break me. I used your name, he whispered, because they wouldn't give me the loan in mine. My breath hitched. What loan? He hesitated too long, far too long. Connor, what loan? Finally, he looked up, and the fear in his eyes was something I hadn't seen since he was a boy hiding a failing report card behind his back. But this wasn't school, and this wasn't a grade. This was something bigger, darker, heavier. A business loan, he said. Sort of. Sort of. My voice cracked like the ground beneath us. He swallowed hard, words trembling. I invested in something. A venture, it looked promising. Everyone said it was safe. A guaranteed return. I just needed startup capital to buy in. The world tilted. What did you invest in? I asked. He looked away. Connor, silence. Tell me, I said, my voice low, steady, the calm before a storm. It was a private fund, he said. Some guys from Sophia's circle, they all put money in, big money. They said it was a sure thing, no risk, guaranteed growth. My stomach dropped. How much, son? He didn't answer. How much? I repeated firmer. He closed his eyes. 200,000. The air left my lungs. It didn't slip out. It didn't fade. It ripped out like something had reached inside me and torn it free. I felt myself take a step back. Not because I chose to, because my body needed distance from the truth. Needed space to understand the weight of what he'd said. 200. I couldn't finish the sentence. Connor's voice cracked. Dad, listen, everyone was doing it. They said it was how people get ahead, how they build real wealth. I wanted to give Sophia the life she dreamed about. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be someone. And you used my name, I whispered. He nodded miserably. You have good credit, better than mine. They approved it instantly when I put your information on the application. My heart hammered in my ears. You forged my signature. His silence confirmed everything. I felt something inside me break, not loudly, quietly. The way ice cracks beneath your feet when you realize you're standing on something thinner than you believed. Dad, I'm sorry, he choked out. I was going to pay it back before you ever even knew. The returns were supposed to start last month. But then the fund collapsed. The word hit harder than the confession. How much is left? I asked, though I already knew the answer. All of it, he whispered. Every dollar with interest. I pressed a hand against my chest. Not because of the pain, but because the truth felt like it had weight, mass, gravity. It dragged the world downward. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said, voice breaking. "I thought I could fix it. I thought the house would give us status, security. If I looked successful enough, the money wouldn't matter." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the confident groom, not the polished adult, not the man trying to impress a world that kept raising the bar. I saw a scared kid drowning in expectations he'd built around himself like walls. "You should have come to me," I said, barely breathing. "I was ashamed," he whispered. "I didn't want you to see how badly I screwed my life up." A tear slid down his cheek. Then another. "I didn't want you to think I was a failure." My voice softened, trembling. "Son, forging my name didn't make you a failure. Hiding from me did." He broke then, shoulders collapsing, hands covering his face, the weight of his choices finally crushing something inside him. I stepped closer, placed a hand on the back of his neck, the way I did when he was young and scared of the dark. And for the first time since the wedding, he leaned into me. Not as a grown man performing confidence, but as a son needing his father. "Dad, what do I do?" he begged. "How do I fix this?" I exhaled slowly, staring into the horizon where the sun was trying to break through thick clouds. "You start," I said quietly, "by telling me everything." "But it's bad," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but the truth always is before it sets you free." He shook his head, guilt tearing through his voice. "You're going to hate me." "I could never hate you," I said, "but I need you to be honest." He wiped his eyes, took a breath, and then, finally, began to speak. Because the money wasn't the deepest wound. The real wound was the part of the story he still hadn't told, the part that would break me more than the debt ever could. Connor's breath shivered in the cold air. His shoulders rose and fell like he was trying to inhale courage and exhale shame. I stood there waiting, not with anger, not with judgment, but with the kind of quiet a father holds when the truth is about to change everything. He wiped his eyes again and looked up at me. "Dad, the money isn't the whole story." My voice stayed calm. "Then tell me the rest." He swallowed, his throat tightening around every word. "When the fund collapsed, I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I thought if I just held everything together long enough, something would fix itself. I thought I could outrun the fallout." "And?" I asked. His lower lip trembled. "And the people who ran the fund, they weren't who they claimed to be." A cold ripple crawled down my spine. "What does that mean?" "It means," he took a shaky breath, "it wasn't a fund at all, it was a scam, a full-blown scam, and they disappeared with everyone's money." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that hit. Not because I didn't expect it, but because hearing it from his mouth made it real. When I opened my eyes again, he wasn't done. "I didn't want Sophia to know. I didn't want her family to know. I thought if I could just get the house, it would buy me time. It would make me look stable, safe, successful." "You thought an expensive house would hide the cracks," I murmured. He nodded miserably. "Yeah, I guess I did." I stepped closer, my voice softer. "And you thought it would hide you from me too." His eyes filled again. "I didn't want you to see how badly I'd messed everything up." I let out a long, slow breath. "Connor, every mistake you made could have been fixed if you'd come to me sooner. But what you hid, what you ran from, that's what turned a small wound into a bleeding one." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I know, and there's something else. Something I should have told you before the wedding, before the party, before the speech." A strange heaviness settled in my chest. "What is it?" He hesitated longer than before, his face twisted with guilt, with fear, with something he'd been carrying for much longer than the debt. "Dad," his voice cracked. "That speech I made at the wedding, the one where I said I hated my last name." He stopped, choking on the memory. "Yes," I asked, even though my chest felt tight around the answer. "It wasn't supposed to be a joke," he whispered. "It wasn't nerves. It wasn't an accident. He looked at me with eyes full of regret. I said it because I wanted to distance myself from you, from this life, from everything I thought would hold me back. The words hit like a hammer, deep, heavy, cracking something inside me I didn't know was still capable of breaking. "Connor," I murmured. He shook his head quickly, panicked. "But I was wrong, Dad. I was so wrong. I thought the name Miller meant small, ordinary. I thought I needed something bigger to prove myself." He pressed his fist to his chest. "But now, after everything that's happened, I'd give anything to feel proud of the name again." A tear escaped my eye before I could stop it, not from anger, not even from pain, but from the raw truth behind his voice, truth he'd buried so deep he nearly lost himself to it. "I didn't realize," he whispered, "that the only thing I ever needed was the one thing I tried to run from." The parking lot fell quiet. The wind softened. Even the world seemed to pause long enough for those words to settle between us. I reached out and gripped his shoulder. "Son, being a Miller never meant being perfect. It meant showing up, owning your mistakes, standing on solid ground even if it's cracked." He nodded through tears. "And right now," I added, "you're doing exactly that." He broke again, this time into my chest, clutching me like a drowning man holding the only thing that could keep him afloat. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered into my jacket. "I'm so sorry." I held him tight, held him the way I used to when he skinned his knee or woke up from nightmares. Held him like a father holds the pieces his son can't carry alone. When he finally stepped back, wiping his face, he whispered, "What happens now?" I looked at him, really looked, and realized something true, painful, and necessary. The journey to fix this wasn't going to be simple, but it was going to start right here, with this moment, with the truth fully laid bare. "We face the consequences," I said softly, "together." His shoulders trembled. "Even if they're bad, especially then." He nodded slowly, the weight of honesty settling on him like a second skin. But beneath it, something else appeared, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Relief. Then he said the words that would carry us into the final chapter. "Dad, there's one more thing you don't know." I felt my stomach tighten. "What is it?" I asked. His answer came softly, and it changed everything. Because the final truth wasn't about debt, money, or a forged signature. It was something deeper, something that tied back to the opening scene, and it would break the story wide open. He hesitated before speaking, not the kind of hesitation born from fear, but the kind that comes from knowing the next sentence will change everything between a father and son. The air around us felt heavy, still, almost sacred, as if the world itself knew we were standing at the edge of something final. Connor wiped his face with the back of his sleeve and looked up at me with eyes more vulnerable than I'd seen since he was a boy. "Dad, that night at the wedding, when I said what I said about our name, I wasn't just trying to impress her family. I wasn't trying to hurt you either. I was trying to protect you, protect me." The words hit with the force of a memory I didn't understand yet. He took a shaky breath. "During the speech, before I said those stupid words, the men who ran that fake fund showed up." My chest tightened. "What do you mean they showed up?" "I mean they were there, Dad, at the wedding, standing in the back, watching me, following me." His voice trembled. "They came to warn me, to remind me what I owed, to pressure me in front of everyone if I didn't act fast." The world tilted again, sharper this time. "They weren't just scammers," he whispered. "They were the kind of men who don't take losses lightly. And they said if I didn't pay something, anything, they'd make sure everyone at the wedding knew who I really was." I felt a cold fist close around my heart. "So when I stood up there at the microphone," he swallowed, "I panicked. I tried to get ahead of the humiliation. I thought if I made a joke of my name, if I made myself sound separate from you, they wouldn't drag you into it." He shook his head, tears returning. "I wasn't rejecting you, Dad. I was trying to shield you from what I'd done." A long silence fell between us. A silence full of pain and truth and the kind of regret that can reshape a man's entire life. "Connor," I whispered, feeling my throat tighten, "you should have told me." "I know," he said, voice cracking. "I was scared. I thought if I told you everything, you'd look at me the way I looked at myself, like I wasn't worth the name you gave me." That sentence broke me in a place I didn't know was still fragile. I stepped closer, put both hands on his shoulders, looked him straight in the eyes. "Son," I said, my voice trembling, "you were never trying to outrun my name. You were trying to outrun your mistakes. And that's something every man, including me, has tried to do." His breath hitched as I continued. "But listen closely. I don't love you because you're perfect. I don't love you because you're successful or impressive or living some life you think I wish I had. I love you because you're my son, and sons make mistakes. Fathers do too. But what matters, the only thing that matters, is what we do next." He nodded slowly, tears streaming freely now. "So what do?" he whispered. "We face it," I said. "Together we go to the bank. We go to the police. We clean this up legally. We rebuild your credit. We rebuild your honesty. And when all of that's over," I squeezed his shoulder gently, "we rebuild us." He choked out a breath that sounded like hope and grief tangled into one. "Dad, I don't deserve you." I shook my head. "No, son, you don't earn a father's love. You inherit it, the same way you inherit his name." His lips quivered as he whispered, "Then I don't want to run from it anymore." And that moment right there was when the opening scene finally made sense. The ballroom, the trembling chandeliers, the empty chairs, the envelope in my hands, the fear in my chest I couldn't name. I wasn't afraid of my son. I was afraid of losing him. And now, standing here with him broken open, honest at last, I realized the truth I'd been circling since the night Martha died. We don't lose our children in the loud moments. We lose them in the quiet ones, the moments when they're hurting, when they're hiding, when they're scared to tell us who they've become. Connor stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry for everything," he whispered. "For hiding, for lying, for dragging your name into something it never deserved." I held him tight. "My name isn't damaged, son. Names don't break, people do. And people can heal." He nodded against my shoulder, breathing shakily. Then, quietly, he asked the question that broke me open. "Dad, will you help me be a better man?" And I answered without hesitation, without doubt, without fear. "Yes, Connor, I will. But only if you promise to walk beside me, not ahead of me, not behind me, beside me." He stepped back, wiping his face, nodding firmly. "I promise." The sun dipped low behind him, casting a warm glow over the cracked pavement. The same pavement he once rode his bike across, scraped his knees on, learned to stand back up from. And in that fading light, in that fragile moment of truth, I understood the lesson that life had spent years trying to teach me. A father's greatest job isn't to build a perfect life for his child, it's to walk with him through the imperfect one he creates. I breathed deeply, looked at my son, and spoke the final truth I had left in me. "Son, the world is heavy, but it gets lighter when two people carry it together." His eyes softened. He nodded. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. Not because the problems were gone, but because we would face them side by side. As we walked toward the truck, the last thing I said, the line I hoped he'd carry for the rest of his life, was this: "A name doesn't define the man defines the name." And in the quiet that followed, I realized he finally understood.